I'm Troy Dawson, the EPEL Steering Committee Chair. Carl is on CPE and Diego are on CPE. What is your official title in CPE there, Carl?
I am the EPEL team lead for the, it's a little confusing, right? Because CPE is a team, but maybe you want to call it a group because there's teams within that team. I am the lead for the EPEL part of CPE.
Okay. And I'm hoping Diego joins us soon or makes it up here soon. There he is, Diego. Perfect. Hey, Diego.
Hello.
I'm going to start off as we usually do with some metrics. We're up to not quite 5 million end users. These are the unique IP addresses. Again, unique IP addresses does not necessarily guarantee machines, but we know we have at least 4.5 million. The numbers don't quite add up because we've seen the next screens, well, they just don't. And majority of them are EPEL 7. EPEL 7's got 3.5 million users. It's sort of fun. Oh, I thought I did change this slide. EPEL 9 is actually the 124,000. I'm not quite sure why my slide is no longer showing that. But EPEL 6 is still beating EPEL 9. EPEL 6 is about 350,000 end users still, which is strange. Again, this is unique IP addresses. Because as we see here, CentOS Linux 8 is not even up to 1 million, but we'll see later that they're over 2 million. So anyway, it's just a fun thing to see. Now this is sort of a newer one. This is using the Brontosaurus Fire. This is 8:9 ratio. So 9 is actually really up to about 250,000. And EPEL 8 is a little over about 2.2 million is where that peaked. Yes,
Troy,
there are still hits on EPEL 5. In fact, this last year was the first time RHEL 9 passed EPEL 5. EPEL 5 has about 18,000. So let's look at some of the others. So this is 9. I like this graph. If any of you have seen Matt Sings, he likes to break things out into weeks. So and I can't even pronounce the first word, ephemeral things are things that are under a week. Those are usually throwaway test machines that still ping EPEL for whatever reason. 1 week, 2.2 to 4 weeks, 5 to 24 weeks, and 25 weeks are the old timers. So we're still getting some old timers for even EPEL 9. But anyway, I like this graph because it does show you basically where we're at. The 8 one is much funner to look at. And the reason I like it is because this dip here is where we turned off the mirrors for CentOS 8. And a lot of people had to reinstall systems. They had to find, are you going to do RHEL, Stream, one of the clones. So there's these few weeks without them. And then you got this big 5 to 24 weeks. And then they kept them on and they got back to orange, the old time machines. And this is another way to look at it. This is actually both with 8 and 9, but doesn't really matter. But it's fun to see this nice red. Hey, here's where everybody shifted. They started off with blue, they went to green, went to red, and then everything shifted over to orange, which is the old-timey things. Anyway, I love statistics. I still have one more statistics slide. I forgot about that. We are continuing to grow maintainers. As you see here, Our maintainers are going. Actually, it doesn't have a graph here, so you don't see that. Last time we did that, EPEL 9 maintainers was in 200. EPEL 8 maintainers was in. I got to look at my things. 100. Anyway, we're growing. We're growing with maintainers and packages, and that's good to see. The packages per maintainer, EPEL 9 was getting close to that 10 packages to maintainer, and then Rust kicked in, and Rust has really skewed a lot of my numbers. So now we're up to 15 packages per maintainer. Some people have quite a few. Now I believe I'm going to turn it over to Diego. There we are.
Yeah, thank you. I hope you can hear me all right. I'm going to give a quick roundup on the current state of the different EPEL branches, starting with EPEL 9. Well, this was the first time an EPEL branch was available with as many packages ready to use before the respective RHEL version launched. This was achieved because of it's the first time where the base of an EPEL branch was not a RHEL version, but a CentOS Stream version. So, which was available to the community way before the RHEL release was launched. And afterwards, it's a successful transition to RHEL 9. Well, here in a more visual way, we can see the comparison between the growth of different branches. As you can see, currently the number of source packages that EPEL 9 has surpassed the EPEL 8 branch. We are still growing rapidly. As of Tuesday, we have more than 15,000 packages from more than 5,000 source packages, and the contributors have been active too, with more than 6,000 body updates submitted. Let's go to the next one. Well, here, as you can see, there are some of the applications that were available on launch when EPEL was made available for RHEL. But if we go to the next slide, we can see all the other applications that have been submitted by different packagers up until now. I could name all the labs that appear here, but I think that sharing the feeling of gratitude to the maintainers for making them available for more people is a thing on its own. Just as a final reminder for EPEL 9, CentOS Stream 9 goes end of life on 31st March of 2024. So that will mean that it will also be the end of life for the EPEL 8 next branch. Oh no, I messed up. It was on 2027. Well, we have still a lot of EPEL 9 forward, so we can still package things there. Regarding EPEL 8, the branch is still growing, in which it makes sense considering the CentOS Stream 8 and the EPEL 8 Next is still alive and accepting updates. That we actually will get to end of life next year on March. But that doesn't mean that EPEL 8 won't still get new packages, because EPEL 8 will continue onward until RHEL 8 actually goes end of life on 2029. We still have lots of time until then. And the next slide. Well, regarding EPEL 7, the end of life of EPEL 7 is basically on June next year. Even though the end of life is near, basically, it's still the most popular branch yet, and it would need more attention because there are lots of basically, if you depend on it, make sure to file bugs, because it's not possible to continue maintaining its support without that. And get involved with commentating and reporting things because since things end up aging there will be more CVEs that need patching and stuff like that. So it's really important. Backporting stuff from RHEL, it would be like RHEL does, would be ideal, but it's not always reasonable. So if you need to do an update to an application there, try to go through the incompatible update process that is stated on the EPEL documentation. That would be it. So next up is Carl.
Yes. So Diego talked about our current EPEL branches. EPEL 10 doesn't exist yet, but we're planning it now and talking about how we're actually going to implement it. And we've got some crazy new ideas that I want to go over. Next slide. So right now with EPEL 7, there's just the one EPEL 7 branch. It's always been built against since its launch, it's been built against the current minor version of RHEL. Right now, that's RHEL 7.9 with an .el7 disk tag and going into the EPEL 7 repo. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Troy. For 8, we mix things up a little bit with CentOS Stream 8 leading RHEL 8 by a little bit, by about 6 months. We occasionally would have noticed packages that wouldn't install. So we needed a place where maintainers could build against CentOS temporarily. We made that with EPEL 8 Next. And like I said, that builds against Stream 8 with a .el8 next disk tag, populating a separate repo. The idea was for maintainers or for users is that RHEL users could keep using just the EPEL 8 repo, and CentOS users could use CentOS Stream 8 with the EPEL 8 and EPEL 8 Next repos to make sure they had compatible packages. That's worked pretty well. We did the same thing for EPEL 9. Go and go to the next slide, Troy. We have the same setup there. We started a little bit differently. As Diego mentioned, we started EPEL 9 building against CentOS Stream 9 to get it started earlier. But then at the RHEL 9 launch, we switched things up to match EPEL 8. And this is the pattern that we've been using. The problem we've noticed is that this kind of setup is not intuitive for maintainers, and it's not always intuitive for users either. The next branches weren't created automatically or even at the same time as the EPEL branches, the main EPEL branch. So the maintainers would have to know when they needed to ask for one, whenever one of their dependencies was different enough between CentOS and RHEL. And so that was a little bit confusing. And then whenever packages in EPEL Next were rebuilt against one of those library changes, there was no way to inherit those into EPEL. I know Troy especially was impacted a lot by this, by the large sprawl of packages and dependencies for KDE whenever Qt would update in RHEL. So you'd have to redo all of that rebuild work twice. And that was a big pain point. Next slide. So I got to thinking about this and thinking about how in Fedora branching, which you can see here in this chart, maintainers can do their builds in Rawhide with a disk tag of the next release, and then they'll be inherited into that next release whenever it comes out. That's something that is really appealing to me, and a lot of maintainers find that workflow intuitive, and the branches happen automatically. So I thought about how could we bring that same kind of idea, inheriting those builds, to EPEL. Next slide. So for EPEL 10, what we're planning out is that we'll have minor version EPEL branches and repos. We'll have just an EPEL 10 branch, and that'll be built against CentOS Stream 10. Initially, it'll have a EL10_0 disk tag. Once RHEL 10.0 comes out, it will have the 10_0 disk tag, and the EPEL 10 branch will move on to 10_1, leading the disk tag will be one ahead, similar to how Rawhide works. That'll populate a different repo path, and then we'll move those forward over time. Once RHEL 10.1 comes out, the EPEL 10 branch will keep building against CentOS Stream 10, but it'll bump up to the 10_2 disk tag, and we'll keep moving forward over time with that, retiring the oldest minor version repo as needed to follow RHEL. That's a very high-level overview of how that's going to work. There's a lot more details. If you want to go ahead and go to the next slide, Troy. If you want to know more or ask questions or get involved in helping make it happen, you can follow that link there, red.ht/EPEL10, and we'd love to have your feedback.
Oh, we actually have time for me to do KDE Plasma. This is just a quick overview on KDE on EPEL 8. No more major updates expected. EPEL 9. 9.3 is going to have an updated QT. So this QT thing that Carl just mentioned is happening on EPEL 9, 9.3. So EPEL Next. Those of you running CentOS Stream have an updated QT. And with that, we're going to be updating the plasma. We will continue to have updated plasmas in EPEL 9 for a period of time. We do have QT6 in EPEL 9 for those of you who want that, but we are not planning on putting Plasma 6 in EPEL 9. We're planning on putting that in copper. For EPEL 10, we're planning on just having QT6. QT6 is in Rel 10. That has been publicly announced. Announced might not be the word, but there's places you can look and see it.
ELN.
ELN, yes. We do plan on having Plasma 6 in EPEL 10. We do not plan on having QT5 in EPEL 10.
I think the word you want is planned.
Planned, yes. I do not plan on maintaining QT5 in EPEL 10. How's that? That's it for the KDE update. I think we actually have some time for questions and answers. ELN++. There is an ELN extras, which is a good way to see if your package will build in the next version of EPEL 10. Oh, we do have some questions. With one EPEL release completed with the new stream release, what advantages or changes do you see in the new workflow? I might need some expansions on that. Personally, on my KDE one, I'll address that because I probably hit the new workflow more than most. It gives me a chance to not only do the QT stuff, but also stage my KDE stuff. Because if I update KDE 2, right at the time of a release, there's a lot of dependencies that hit me. KDE is always pulling in new dependencies and dropping a couple packages. And so having the EPEL Next allows me to stage it. But then as Carl says, I have to rebuild everything. But with
it's a good trial run. You know what steps you need to take. You just can't do them once. You have to do them twice.
Correct. I don't know if any other people really see much of a difference between the workflow.
I think for the day-to-day, for some maintainers, it has been frustrating trying to understand the EPEL Next model. But on the opposite end, for the users, it makes it where they have packages that actually install, which is better than just having a package being broken for 6 months if you're a CentOS user. Whenever all the CentOS stream changes happen, we didn't want broken EPEL packages to be a reason why people didn't adopt it and get on board with a distribution that they can actually contribute to.
Yep. Okay. I see another question. Any plans to make EPEL IO more EPEL related? Right now it's just a redirect to fedoraproject.org, which is not wrong, but could be more close to EPEL. I have no clue who put up EPEL.io.
I know a little history there.
Okay.
A long time ago, I registered that domain, and before I got employed by Red Hat, and I hit up Smooge about it and said, "Hey, I saw this was available. I registered it so nobody else did. Can I donate it to the project somehow?" And the answer was, "I'm not sure." And eventually, we did transfer it over to whatever registrar Fedora uses. I'm sure something that Red Hat pays for. But as far as making use of it, I don't even know who to contact inside Red Hat for that domain. I'm assuming somebody inside the Fedora project does, and that would be really cool to have like an actual homepage there, or at least have it redirect to the EPEL section of the Fedora docs at a minimum. But that's something I haven't thought about in a while. I forgot that I even registered it.
see if we.
I'm really curious how Robert even found out about EPEL.io. Because I don't think we listed anywhere in any of the docs or anything else.
Well, Kevin on the chat mentioned that, both Justin and Kevin mentioned that they had access to those, so they can help updating those if we need to.
Excellent. Any other Q&A questions? Yeah, Justin pointed out in the chat that maybe we need a fedoraproject.org/EPEL page. That's something that has been brought up during the website redesign. I know they had plenty of other work on their plate at the time, so it didn't ever get bubbled up to the surface, and certainly didn't block the announcement or release of the website. But that is something that I would like to see eventually. I unfortunately am not a web designer and have almost zero design skills, so that is not something I'm going to be. Nobody wants me designing that page. I'll put it like that. But I think that would be really cool if someone with an eye for design or interested in that could get involved there and have us a nice, pretty splash page. It's a little weird because it's not a variant of Fedora itself, but it's not really a SIG, and it's like we all kind of have this identity crisis in EPEL of like, what do we call ourselves? I've somewhat settled on long-term initiative. But there's not really a great place or a category for that on the website.
Yeah. You could have me design it. You guys know how wonderful I am at web design. My web pages look
Well, you would just be frustrated because you wouldn't be able to use tux on it, right? Because of trademark.
Well, you've seen my Willet page. That's my HTML.
Peak web design in my mind. Super efficient.
Yeah. You know, I learned HTML at 92, 93, and I have not progressed much beyond that.
Well, at least it works.
It works. That's true. It always works. Raw, basic HTML always works.
Have you ever seen the quite vulgar website? I won't mention the full name, but it's a website where it's just, this is a website basically, and it talks about how simple and straightforward it is, and there's like almost no CSS or anything, no JavaScript. I'll have to find it and send it to you. It's quite funny.
Back in the days, we were happy to have a picture come up. You know, that was, I can put a picture on my page. Oh, Justin has the URL for the things. Any other questions? I mean, we can always do and leave some space for the next people. But
I'll give a shout out for ongoing questions after the conference. You can join us in either Pound EPEL on IRC, or there's a Fedora EPEL chat room in Matrix that is bridged the same. You can communicate with us in either of those places. We have our mailing lists. Most of the traffic happens on EPEL Devil. There's also an EPEL announce list. We also have EPEL tags on Fedora's Discourse if you'd rather use that platform. So we're in all the places. Come talk to us.
Yep.
Come become us by getting involved. That's
true. I was going to say, it's more than just us. There's several other committee members here. And we do a lot of work. And Diego mentioned it in his, but I also want to mention that too. Thank you, all of you guys. Like I said, we're up to many maintainers. Thank all of you for your help and your contribution to EPEL. You're making it a great place, and it's just sort of neat watching it. I don't totally know how Matt feels, but I sort of do, because it's like I'm doing some of the work, but so's everybody else, and it's cool. So those are my final words. Do either of you two have anything?
Oh, a couple more questions.
Two,
it looks like
two more questions.
Right.
Somebody did bring that up. An accumulation of all EPEL licenses. Let's do the EPEL licenses first. I don't know what that means.
I'm trying to think what that means. I think maybe Robbie might be talking about the tarballs that Release Engineering creates that have all of the spec files for packages. For the longest time, there was a tarball that was available that was just for rawhide spec files. We actually do now have, I forget who it was that completed the work on that, but I very much appreciate it. Now we have separate tarballs, and I can find the links later, where you can download a tarball, extract it, and it's all the spec files for each EPEL branch. So if you wanted to, say, download the EPEL 7 tarball, extract it, and then do a fancy grep command to get all of the license fields, trim out the white space, and then get the unique tags, you could see the distribution of the licenses like that. That's probably what I did.
Yep. As far as, by the way, no stats this time about the distribution of rel clones using EPEL repo. We were finding that was causing more controversy than it was helping. We also found, maybe I should mention this, maybe I shouldn't, but since we're not doing it, I'm going to mention it, that, hey, I could have my own T. Dawson distribution just by doing a couple of changes on config files. And we were thinking it was causing more controversy than it was helping.
We also only had 30 minutes today, so it was a fairly obvious thing to trim out for time.
Yep. And we're on time. Thank you all